Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the November 25th, 2024 meeting of the North Attleboro Town Council. Tonight, we're joined by Girl Scout Troop 19 from North Attleboro, and we're asking them to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. On you, whenever you're ready.
I pledge allegiance
Of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Good job. All right, full house tonight. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, November 13th, 2024.
I make a motion to approve town council minutes of November 13th, 2024.
Second. Got a motion from Mr. Simmons, a second from Mr. Costello. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions?
One.
Motion passes 8-0-1. Next up, we have Town Council Community Announcements. I'll go first. Tonight, as I just mentioned, we have Girl Scout Troop 19. In September of 2024, 3 junior scouts who are here tonight and joining us here tonight, Brooklyn Austin and Dora Hamill and Mita Peruri, completed their Girl Scout Bronze Award. The Girl Scout Bronze Award is the highest award for a junior Girl Scout. It's an opportunity for Girl Scouts to address a community issue, research the cause, and develop a solution. These scouts chose their project to help heat the homeless. They partnered with Open Umbrella Collecting and hand-making winter accessories. Just wanted to say nice job and thank you and congratulations to the young ladies of Troop 19 and thank you for what you've done. And I don't know if you care to address the council or tonight at all, and you're more than welcome to.
It's your project. You want to tell them where you got the idea?
So,
If you want to step up, you can to the microphone. If you feel
You
nervous.
can do it. Come on.
If you feel nervous, it's okay.
Please.
Scary.
go with her.
You choose.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, we could
We do. What time we doing it?
take your time. Yeah, we want to hear about it. So what did you do?
I was doing the North Attleboro cleanup, and at like the place near Monkey Joe's used to be, and we found a homeless person, and that winter he had lost almost all or most of his fingers on both hands. So I decided for my project I would do heat the homeless.
Wow.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great idea. And you all did it together. That's great. Well done. Well done. All right. So I think I had one other thing. So last one. On October 17th, the town council was CC'd on the resignation letter of a town employee, prompting an independent investigation. The investigation was commissioned by the assistant town manager, and the results were shared with me. The investigating firm is Gerard J. Hayes, Human Resources Labor Relations Consultant to Public Employers. After interviewing key members of town hall staff, the investigator found all claims made by the former building inspector to be unsubstantiated. You are all in receipt of this report. We, the town of North Attleboro, take all allegations of misconduct seriously and are committed to ensuring that no one, regardless of their position or title, is above the town's policies or procedures relating to personnel matters. To ensure transparency regarding the situation, we will be releasing an appropriately redacted version of the report to those who have requested it. Thank you. Are there any other councilor comments tonight? Mr. Gould.
Thank you. Congratulations to North Attleboro High football team. The Super Bowl is scheduled at Gillette Stadium for Friday, December 6th at 8 p.m.
Awesome.
Go North.
Any other comments? Let's not forget about the Thanksgiving Day game in North Attleboro this year. That's going to be exciting too. So if there's no other comments from the council, we can move on to the town manager report. Mr. Borg.
Council President, members of the council, a couple items for this evening. One, we're still in an elevated fire threat. We do anticipate that this will probably delay the normal burning permit that happens normally at the first of the year because of the drought, so we'll keep everybody updated. The rain has helped, but we need a little bit more. We're still in that. Also, from the fire department. They've just installed a new Sharps, that's a needle depository kiosk at the fire headquarters. So if you have that and you need to dispose of that medical waste, that's a great place to do it. Some communications items, again, just echoing what the Councilor Gould put out about the Super Bowl that's coming up. They're in that. I'll be doing a town manager December taping this week for the Town Manager Report with North TV. I had the opportunity to attend the Firefighter of the Year recipient awards in Worcester, and we highlighted a very elite team from North Attleboro and their recognition for help saving the life of one of their own firefighter burned. So, and they were recognized with the Citation for Valor for that. Congratulations to them. Also, we're kicking off on December 9th through the 13th a program that has been spearheaded by a couple of our high school students. John Thomas and Bobby Mood are going to put together a senior technology program, and they've worked with both the library and the senior center and the Council on Aging on this. It's a free workshop for our residents. Everything is supplied, so if you need more information, please reach out. We'll make sure you get everything you need for that. Town reports are out. We have a hard copy still, and it's available on the town website as well. Thanks to everybody that did a great job on the annual report. Again, piggybacking off the comment about the North versus Attleboro game on Thanksgiving Day. That's on there. We have that as well. Hope everybody gets a chance to attend that. This coming December 1st, the Sunday after Thanksgiving, big day for the town. A couple of events on that one. Third annual Turkey Trot. We're closing in on over 500 runners right now for the Turkey Trot. So we're really excited. Thanks to the team that put that together. Still an opportunity for you to sign up. Run, walk, roll, stroll. Crawl, even, however you get it. Whatever you want to do it, please come out. We'd love to have you, right? There is a 2-hour time limit, though. All right, so with that, should be plenty enough time to finish a 5K. We are honored to be able to do the rededication of the Richards Memorial Library. That'll be held on that same Sunday, the 1st. We are privileged and honored to be working with the Masonic Lodge on the rededication of this. It'll happen at 2 o'clock before the Santa Parade. So if the town council has an opportunity to attend that, you can move right over to the step-off point for the 3 o'clock Santa Parade, which I have been asked to be one of the judges this year. So I'm looking forward to all seeing you marching in step, carrying your banner. So, and I'll make sure, Council President, you have the banner out there. And another initiative that was started was the Letters to Santa. So if you have an unstamped letter to Santa, the post office will be a part of the parade and collect those. If you're out at the parade, bring your letter to Santa. They will be able to collect it from you as they march by in the parade. Looking forward to having that out. Some closings. The town office will be closed on Thanksgiving Day and the Friday after, so no major updates there. Recycling center will be closed this Thursday and Friday as well. But we'll be on a one-day delay on trash. Check out the website, social media as well, and we're doing that. Big shout out to Karen Testa, our Senior Center Director, put together a Snow Angels program, right? And this is volunteers to help elderly residents in town, and they're in the time of snow, if you need some shoveling done, right? They will help out with that. Please contact the contact here for this if you're interested in being a part of that. The banner update, we're getting closer. We're coming to, I think, we're in the red zone on this one. We're getting ready to push it across the finish line. But we've created 2 new designs and 1 for the veterans, so we're happy about that. The new poles have been installed downtown. One of the lower bracket arms was the incorrect one, so we're waiting for the vendor to send us the new ones. The banners are now off at the print shop. We expect to have them probably early January, and we'll be putting those up. And I know we're going to have a meeting up next week to discuss this further. Looking forward to that, but the banners are on their way. The public forum for the MSBA project was on the 14th. Nice turnout, about 40, 50 folks from the community came to the high school. There was a good presentation of what the designs, a lot of good Q&A that happened during this one. One of the ones that came out was cost, and we talked about where we think that, and then there are still some, estimates that have to be refined and some more information to follow, but a real good discussion. You can go to the school's website for that project and get more information there. And if anybody wants to know more, please come into Town Hall. Happy to sit down with everybody and explain everything about the current project. No matters for finance update, nothing on personnel, and you see our open jobs. And I will say, Public Works, the director and I are meeting this week to talk about our openings in the water department and the wastewater, to take a look at this and what we can do. I know Councilor Gould has sent a couple messages before on talking and looking at what can be done. These are sensitive positions, and we need to figure out the best way and how to attract the right applicants for these positions. That includes my update, subject to your questions.
Any questions, Mr. Borg? Mr. Gould?
Not a question, but just a comment. I believe as Mr. Borg is well aware, that my suggested solution would be to increase the salary to a competitive salary, and that's how we'll get a qualified applicant.
I was just noticing driving through downtown tonight that the poles, the lamp posts look great with the wreaths, and then the Christmas lights on some of them, and then the wreaths that are lit across all of them. Really just a nice look for the holiday season in downtown. So well done. Who's responsible for doing that? Is that our?
That's a collaborative effort between Parks and NAED, right? And NAED does a lot of the ladder and truck work for us, and Mr. Carvalho does a lot of the helping get the lights and making sure those are available. So.
Excellent. Looks good. All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, unless there's other questions. So we'll move on to item 5, resident and community comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the council this evening? Mr. McCarthy, please step forward.
How are we doing?
Good, how are you?
Should I stand here or there?
Is there a mic there?
There is a mic there.
Oh, okay. I just want to announce that Troop 23, we're kicking off our Christmas trees again. We got 350 trees yesterday. So we're going to be starting selling them Black Friday, this Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and then 6 to 9 on Fridays, 9 to 9 on Saturdays, 10 to 7 on Sunday, and Monday night, 6 to 9. So please come down. We're at the corner of, right across from Coffee Connection, the corner of Whiting Street. So we'd love to sell you a tree. We'll tie it to your car, and if you can't get it home, we'll deliver it to you.
Thank you. What's the charity?
What's that?
What's the charity or what's the cause?
It's to raise money for our troop.
Goes to the troop?
And it mainly supports us going to summer camp because it's pretty expensive. We go to the summer camp, Camp Yagu every July, second week of July. Had the same site for the last, 80 years or so. And we also have 3 Eagle Scouts coming up, and one that just moved up to life and is going to be starting an Eagle project soon. So
Very cool. How many kids are in the troop, approximately?
we have 25 right now, and 3 just eagled, and or 2 just eagled, and 1's coming up on Eagle.
All
I
right.
know who that is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you getting, thank you, Kevin. Are you getting the same trees from the same place last time? Because last year they were really good.
Yes, got them from Canada. Yep,
Nice.
got them yesterday.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other members of the public who wish to address the council this evening? All right, we'll move on. Next up, we have the public hearing on the fiscal year 25 tax classification, public hearing and vote. Measure 2025-24 discussion relative to vote. That's actually next. So why don't we start with the public hearing, please?
Town of North Attleboro Town Council, November 25th, 2024, public hearing, legal notice. The Town Council will hold a public hearing with the Board of Assessors in the Joanne Cathcart Conference Room at the Town Hall at 43 South Washington Street on Monday, November 25th, 2024 at 7 p.m. to set the FY25 tax classification for the Town of North Attleboro. For more information regarding the tax classification hearing, please contact the Town Manager's Office at 508-699-0100. The public hearing will be broadcast by North TV. Make a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
A motion from Mr. Simmons, a second from Mr. Donovan. Be a roll call vote. Mr. Costello? Yes. Gould?
Yes.
Aye, guys. Mr. Shanahan?
Much.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Simmons?
Yes.
Aye, Justice Parham, yes.
Aye.
Ms. Logan, yes. Mr. Gregory?
Yes.
Ms. St. Pierre?
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 9-0. The meeting is on. So, are there any members of the public who wish to speak and address the council this evening as part of the public hearing? All right, then we will take a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Costello.
Aye.
Mr. Gould.
Yes.
Mr. Shanahan.
Aye.
Mr. Donovan.
Aye.
Mr. Simmons.
Yes.
I, Justin Parra, MA, yes. Mr. Mr. Gregory.
Yes.
Ms. St. Pierre.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes 9-0. The public hearing is adjourned, or closed, I should say. So now we can move on to the next item, which is fiscal year 25 tax classification, public hearing and vote, measure 2025-24, discussion relative to, in the vote for the residential factor shift. We do have our assessor, as well as our board of assessors here tonight. Cheryl, I don't know if you need to, do you need to call it your meeting to order or anything, or we just, probably don't. Did you, Mr. Borg, or did you guys wish to present anything this evening outside of what you've already covered?
I think,
Please step forward, go ahead.
yeah, just step forward. Excuse me. From the last meeting, I think everyone has all of the data necessary to make your decision. And I guess on the good side, we haven't had any questions since the last meeting, so apparently what you received was sufficient. If something comes up tonight, of course, we will do our best to answer it.
Thank you. We appreciate you being here and appreciate all the, the great content you provided us. And I guess it is probably a good sign that there were no questions this time around. Thank you. So I'll open it up for council discussion. Folks, we do have the tables in front of us. We've been provided last week by our assessor and board of assessors regarding the CIP shift or shifts and potential shifts. I'm trying to pull it up. I have way too much paperwork tonight. Thank you, John. Yeah, I found it. We were at 1.28 last year. That's our current rate. So I'll open it up for council members if there's any discussion on this one, or if anyone has a motion, or everyone approach it, Mr. Donovan.
So looking at the numbers, if we stay at 1.28, it's a slight increase across the board. I think it's about a 30% increase, 30-cent increase, something like that. So pretty minor, which I'd be fine with. I also looked at if we went down to 1.25, the residential rate would change to 1183, and commercial industrial would be 1547, personal property would be 1543. That would result in a slight decrease for the commercial, industrial, and commercial rate.
Yep.
And a slightly larger increase for residential, not a lot, about $25 a year, something like that. So that would probably be the range that I would be looking at, somewhere between 1.25 to 1.28. Anywhere in there, I think that's showing that we're not trying to really stick it to anybody. We're keeping everything pretty even, maybe giving the businesses a little bit of a break if we can, but I think all of that that's a reasonable range to go with. So I can make a motion if you like, or if there's more discussion.
You can always make a motion, but is there any discussion before that, Mr. Gould?
Just to clarify, so a shift of 1 is a flat rate for even residents?
Would be a single rate.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if we go closer to 1, like Councilor Donovan is suggesting, then we would be helping businesses or residents?
Businesses.
You would help the business.
You read the table. Do you have the table?
Yes. Yeah.
1.25, if you go over to the far right, the third section to the far right, you can kind of see the residential estimate in Mr. Donovan's scenario at 1.25 was a $165 increase for your average resident versus a $91.70 decrease for commercial.
And just as a contrast, just for clarification, the biggest split we could do would be a 40% split. That would still increase the average resident only $3, but it would increase the average business $3,500. So, my opinion would be we would not want to go anywhere near that.
I think it helps not to distract from the current conversation, but Mr. Borg also gave us this, or maybe this was you, Cheryl. I don't know.
It was Cheryl.
Cheryl, you gave us this table here that I think the public should really see. Like, it should be, we should
We'll make all
make a
the
slide
documents.
out of this because it's important, but it compares North Attleboro's residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property tax rate per thousand with our surrounding communities, Attleboro, Foxborough, Mansfield, Plainville, and Rentham, for both fiscal year '24 and '25, because we're, I think, besides Plainville, we're the only community that hasn't done it yet, so we'll set ours tonight. But the moral of the story is we're very, very competitive with our surrounding communities. I think we're the lowest, looking at this table, we're the lowest across all 4 classes. I could be mistaken, but I think we are
With
the
the
lowest.
exception, under Rentham, with their latest shift, they went from 0.33 to 0.38 on their shift, and they went to 1159. If you hold at your current 1.28, you would be slightly higher, but you would be $2 less on the commercial, industrial, and personal property.
So highly competitive, and for me, that's where I want to be. I want to be on the lower end, and I want to be highly competitive with our surrounding communities. I don't want to be overly high or overly low. I want to be competitive, because I personally believe that tax rate is just one factor that businesses use to choose to come into our town. I actually think it's probably pretty low on the list, and particularly if there isn't any comparative advantage for any of our surrounding communities, it sort of takes that out of the equation. So that's strategically where I like to be on this. I'll say, as far as the proposal goes for the shift here, I didn't want to go quite as low as Dan at that 1.25, but I came in here tonight sort of just hovering around 1.28 where we're at today. I actually probably prefer staying where we're at, but again, I'm open to other suggestions, of course. And personally, the reason why I want to do that is I really want to maintain flexibility for the future in terms of if we end up going forward with this new school project. I think we may have to actually look in terms of offering some cushion for the taxpayers, particularly the residential taxpayers, in that first year or second year when those payments kick in. That could be a lever that we have at our disposal to help reduce the burden on the residents, at least for a few years, right, as we try to transition into potentially that debt exclusion. So this year, my inclination would be to kind of leave things pretty much the way they are, because it really is a pretty relatively flat increase or nominal increase, I would say, year to year, just leaving it where it is. So again, I'm thinking of kind of being conservative today as far as that goes, with the acknowledgement or understanding that we're probably going to need to look much more closely at that year out, 2 years out, as that exclusion comes onto the books, and that will have an impact on us. So that's my view on this right now. John.
Looking at where we are now, which is a shift of 1.28, you would have roughly an increase of $140 on the residential and $766 on the commercial, more on industrial. We don't have as many parcels, and then personal property would be $379. If we went to 1.27, you would only be going up from what we have now, $2 on the residential versus what we have now, which would be 140, just so I'm clear. It's 142.25 if we go to 1.27. But that would cut the business increase on commercial almost in half. Go from 766 increase to a 366 increase. And that would still give us the second lowest residential rate, and we would have the lowest commercial, industrial, and personal property. So that's where I came in. I came in between 1.27 and 1.28. It's not a whole ton of room, but I like the idea of keeping it similar.
Yeah.
We've got some big stuff coming up. I don't want to take any big swings this year and then big swings back next year. So I would be looking at 1.27.
For what it's worth, 1.27, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Andy, go ahead.
For what it's worth, 1.27 also makes a lot of sense to me because, again, no one likes their taxes to go up, but it's gonna anyway, right? So 140, 29, it's $2 over the course of the year increase to residents if we go up to 1.27. And to John's point, it does cut the commercial increase by roughly 50%. So that 1.27 would be where I would be looking as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gould.
And I agree, I would be 1.27 to 1.29 So I'm okay with any minor incremental shift. We're not talking big dollars if we only go up or down one.
What's the math? I should know this, but like what, Cheryl, what's the math? Like, what's driving that? So, for example, 1.28 to 1.27 is basically a $2 change for residents. But then you go down to 1.26 and then it's a $20 change. And it kind of, you see that pattern throughout the chart. What's the math driving that, or how's that work?
Average bill for that class divided minus the, so each of them had their, the average bill last year was the same for all within that class, and then the difference minus the estimated what this year would be. And that gives you the difference.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think his question is if we're only going up the difference between 0.27 and
Yeah.
0.28, I would expect a consistent increase.
Yes, thank you.
Based on each additional hundredth, right? I would expect it to be
Yeah.
consistent, but it doesn't. It goes from,
It's like pairs, that's why I was confused.
Yeah, right, it is
I was just
pairs.
curious,
It is, you're
what's
right.
The
that?
average home is 569,000, last year 569,820. The average commercial, off the top of my head, is like 1.8 million this year, so there's a huge difference.
You had a 10% increase.
no, I
in-
don't, sorry. I think the point Justin is trying to make, and I'm trying to echo, is that I understand why the delta between the residential and the commercial is extreme, because there are way more houses.
Right.
Yes.
Right? But you would think from one step to the next in residential and one step to the next in commercial would be fairly consistent. We might, like, let's say on the residential side, you might expect $10 per step, and on the commercial side, you might expect $100 per step. But it seems to be 2887, 2824, and then it goes down $400 for the next two.
Right.
And then it goes down another $400 for the next two. So I think that was my question.
Me too.
I double-checked the formula,
I
but I
Okay, so maybe it's not as simple as just 1.28 times the tax amount? Is there another variable in the equation?
I made extra effort to make sure, but each of those cells, I did,
Okay, all right.
I tried to check them.
I'm not questioning your math so much as I didn't know, I'm trying to question.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to cause an issue, I was just
No.
legitimately curious, because I didn't understand how
Okay,
that would work, and I hadn't noticed it until now, because I
Notice
was
it either.
No, I was looking at.
only looking at a range.
you do?
All right, well, we can go forward with the data that we have, and if there's any
I think so.
concerns, we can.
Do you want to help us out?
So could it be the large kind of shifts between 1.26 and 1.27? Those shifts are small, but when you get into the actual tax rate times the value, you lose the small and you go to a much bigger delta. So when you have those increases based on the value,
So
it
a
is going to
graduated
go
tax
up.
schedule as opposed to a
Graduated.
flat tax?
Yes.
That's what
Okay.
you're saying.
Maybe.
Should still be uniform.
Well, no, because if you get
No.
over a certain valuation, if you get, but no,
Oh, is it a
Typically,
more complicated formula,
yeah,
you're saying?
yeah. So the
The
tax rate
properties
might
don't
increase
have the same
after a
So is
certain
that
valuation.
exponentially? Okay.
Your income tax, you pay more if you
This would be-
make less than
Go into a higher bracket.
Lot size.
So when you go up
Commercial property?
by
That's
factors,
how it works in property tax.
so when you go up by factors and you're increasing the rate, you are increasing the rate on the commercial property has a wider span of values, so when you get the average value increase, so these aren't the individual increases, not everybody's going to get an increase of
Yeah.
366.83, that's for the average. So when you have the higher properties taking up more and you have the lower properties taking up less, when you have the smaller increases, you have a larger data pool that you're working with.
Got it.
So you have a wider variety of values in the commercial industrial. So in order to get the average increase, you're looking at a much higher high and a much lower low to get the average. That's why it looks like that big jump.
I'm just gonna say we go with the. 'Cause I don't understand that.
Stay the same, then we're good.
Tell me this is right and what we've always right, and I'm gonna go with that. And have a conversation offline, maybe we wanna dig
There
more
we
into it.
go, now we're cooking.
Because we could be here all night. So we had a few different conversations so far. We tossed around 125, 127, 1.25, 1.27, 1.28. Basically, has been the theme so far. Mr. Simmons, do you have something else?
I have a motion, if you're willing to take one.
Sure.
I have a motion to accept a residential factor of .9554.
Second.
No Shanahan?
It was.
I got a motion from Mr. Simmons, a second from Mr. Shanahan. That's the residential factor, right, of .955.
That's correct. Yes, so you're voting the residential factor.
Okay, all right.
0.27 on the CIP shift if you're checking that shot. Do I have any discussion on that motion, Mr. Shanahan?
I trust you guys. I'm just not settled with the math. If it doesn't turn out to be the numbers we're looking at, do we still have time to redo it if we have to?
I would hope so, right? We could call a special meeting.
You'd have to do it through special meeting, but you would have to have a special meeting in the next few days.
Yeah, well, if that was the case, we would. I'm saying, absolutely. I don't think that's going to be the issue, though, but if it is, we would certainly pull the trigger on a special meeting immediately.
Yeah, right.
100%.
I agree.
That would cut it very, very, very close.
I'm just in the highly unlikely scenario that Mr. Gould was speculating on.
These
That's what we would do.
numbers are contingent anyways. It always changes a penny or two once you enter everything in
Yeah.
to the system. So the rate is always give or take a few cents.
Right.
That's understandable. That's understandable. Okay.
I have faith in you, though.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
I trust your math.
100%. Any further discussion? No? All right, then, hearing none, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that motion passes.
Nice.
.9554, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Board of Assessors and Carol. The next item for discussion is and vote is Measure 2025-25, discussion relative to and vote for the small commercial exemption. Mr. Simmons.
I am going to abstain,
Okay, you'll-
as I have in the past. I have one of the properties that could fall under this.
Very good. Is there any discussion or any motions, and what's the?
I would move to adopt the small business exemption.
Second.
Simple enough?
Do you need an amount?
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to find in the packet, what's the,
10%?
You have to state the percentage, it can be up to 10%.
The last year was
10%.
10%.
would you please restate them?
Do I have to withdraw my second?
Yeah, why not?
I withdraw my second.
Withdraw the motion.
Okay.
New motion, move to adopt the small business exemption of 10%.
Second.
Motion for Mr. Gould, a second from Mr. Shanahan. Is there any discussion on this one? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Aye.
That motion passes 8-0 to 1. Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good
If I might,
Please.
just thank you to the council, making it pretty painless, I guess, this year. But also, I think I can speak for the board in thanking Cheryl and the rest of our office staff, Sue, Rick, and Christian. What you folks received last week is just a small piece of the time and effort that goes into getting everything ready to put out the bills. There's a lot going on in the background you don't see, and I'd like to publicly thank them for all the work that's been involved to put this together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We share your
very
thanks.
much.
Appreciate it. Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.
All right, so we,
Splitting it into two meetings was
Absolutely.
a winning idea.
Yep,
thank you, I agree. Gives us time to digest it.
makes all the difference.
We'll move on. There are no confirmations this evening, so we can get into the subcommittee reports. Finance, Mr. Simmons, you got anything?
Yes, Finance met. I believe we need a public hearing.
You do, sir.
on the purchase of the new ambulance. I will highlight what we had discussed at the meeting. We presently have 4 ambulances. The one that we are looking to replace is the oldest. It is approximately 10 years old. We asked the average age of ambulances, and we were told around 5 years. It's not so much mileage, it's years and number of runs. They have gone up roughly 70% in call volume over the lifetime of this ambulance, and the vast majority are medical in nature. This is a fund which does not impact the budget. The ambulance pays for itself. The ambulances, the maintenance, the firefighter salaries used to staff the ambulances, they're all paid. We were able to lock in this price of $427,785 by locking it in 2 years ago. They are now over $500,000 for ambulances. This one ended up being a little early, so we can take possession early, and we would again rotate the oldest, highest mileage ambulance out, and so we would have our 2 newest ambulances as the main ambulances, and then we would have 2 backup ambulances. We did have a few times where we had to borrow other towns' ambulances because so many of ours were in the shop. Maintenance is done regularly on this, and the cost of it was just becoming too much, but more than the cost, it was the time out of service that was starting to concern the fire department. After this is done, we will still have over $1 million in that account. This is how we have done ambulances in the past. We unanimously recommended positive action for town council.
Thank you for that. Thanks for the report out. Very good. So you have to have a public hearing, or do we? The finance committee or the council?
The council does, sir. This falls under the charter where it meets the requirement for a capital improvement program because we had ordered it 2 years ago, not knowing exactly when it would come up, and it wasn't included with the regular CIP in the previous year because it wasn't scheduled to be delivered, but now it is, and it's not tied to the next CIP, so you have to have a public hearing for it. We have a couple of other projects that we're going to actually ask you to do that. The Martin School Playground is coming in, so because we have an earmark with funding on that as well, and so we've been working with the schools to deliver that. So we have one, Tony, what was the other one?
Furniture of the senior center.
The furniture of the senior center was another earmark that came in that's outside of the regular CIP project. So that was Representative Scanlon's earmark, and those funds are due to expire in June of next year, so we want to be ahead of that and get those in front of you. So regardless of the funding source, right, because this is coming from the ambulance receipt reserve, it still has to go through the charter's process for capital improvements and required. And we normally do that with the budget, with the other, all the other items, and we have a public hearing, we tie it all together. These are outside of it, so we're asking to come before you for that.
Okay, so most likely at our next council meeting, we'll have that public hearing.
9 December would be scheduled,
Vote
yes.
on it. All right, very good. Any questions for Mr. Simmons before we move on? Any other items from FinCom?
No.
No? All right. Economic growth and sustainability?
Nothing at this time.
Bylaw?
We have a first reading. So we talked about this at our last meeting. This is Measure 2025-008, the Multi-Unit Residence Overlay District Zoning Bylaw. We are required by the state to pass a bylaw regarding the MBTA communities. We are an MBTA adjacent community. This was referred to the bylaw committee in conjunction with the planning board. We were given their bylaw and their map over which districts would be chosen to be part of the MROD. We were set to meet last Thursday to discuss this again. We had already met with it. We were basically meeting again to approve it. However, we got a letter on November 15th from an acronym, EOHLC, the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, where they gave us some very minor feedback on the bylaw. Specifically, and if you look, so we have 3 versions of the bylaw in your packet. The third version is the red line version. They gave the bylaw 4 comments, 3 of which required minor revisions, and that is what's in the third version. You'll see the red lines. One of them was the bylaw itself was entitled multi-unit housing, and then throughout the bylaw, it used the term multi-family housing. So the planning board met last Thursday to streamline and make sure we use multi-unit housing throughout and defined it as such. They also noticed that one of the lots only had 40 feet of frontage and our bylaw required 60 feet of frontage. We revised our bylaw to drop that down to 40 feet of frontage. Well, we didn't, the planning board did. The third one was just a general comment for moving forward. They said we can't be careful when you put in design standards, basically, but our bylaw does not contain design standards, and the design standards are outside the purview of the town council anyway. That is a planning board issue, so no changes were required. It was just a probably pretty canned comment for all reviews, basically saying just make sure when you're moving forward you don't do this. And the last one, they requested some language in section I-1 that basically stresses that this is permitted by right and that there can't be pushback on the developers coming in and wanting to develop it. It doesn't require a special permit. It is permitted by right. So there's no special permit agency. So I would say that none of the changes are substantive. They were clarifications. So we voted unanimously to recommend this favorably to the town council. End of report, pending your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shanahan. Are there any questions?
Just a comment that just that by adopting this protects us from potentially losing state earmarks and grant funding. So this is definitely a good thing to do. So thank you for everyone that was involved in this.
Any other questions or comments? So this was the first reading. At our next meeting, we'll most likely have the second reading and vote on this one.
Yeah.
That would be,
I guess just one
in time
comment.
to comply, right?
I think the acronym EOHLC review just shows that the planning board did a really good job putting this together, making sure they crossed their Ts and dotted their Is. They actually, as we learned tonight at our meeting, joined a group meeting where they were asking such specific questions that they were put in touch with the general counsel for the EOHLC to answer questions because the person representing them at the meeting wasn't qualified, wasn't aware enough to answer all the questions they had. So they had put together a bylaw that was so tight that the feedback was that minimal. So just a thanks to them. I know they've been working on it, Mr. Borg, for 6 months, a year and 6 months.
Quite a long time, about 6 months.
Yeah, so it's been a long time coming, and they put together a tight bylaw that passed with very few review comments. So just a tip of the hat to them.
and there's already been a couple of public hearings on this, correct? We had one.
They did their, sorry.
They did theirs, sir, and you've had yours, so we've had, and then you've all welcomed, and there's been opportunity for public comment at each of these, and you'll have, if somebody is still concerned, they have another opportunity before your second reading.
One more chance next
And
meeting.
that was also a question that I believe Counselor Donovan posed in the bylaw meeting, was if there was any public feedback in their board meeting, and there was none.
Appreciate the update and the work involved. I would take a motion to waive the reading. It is rather lengthy.
So moved.
Second.
I get a motion from Mr. Simmons, a second from Ms. St. Pierre, to waive the first reading of the bylaw. Is there any discussion on that one? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? That motion passes 9-0. The first reading is waived. We'll pick this back up again at our next meeting. Andy, you got anything else?
That is all at this time.
Rules?
Nothing at this time.
School?
Nothing at this time?
School Building Committee? I think Mike already gave us a little bit of an update there. Anything else you guys would care to add? Communication, public participation, and engagement?
Nothing at this time.
Local emergency planning?
Nothing at this time.
Audit Review Committee? Nothing at this time.
Sir.
Mr. Borg.
The CLA is wrapping up their current audit of the FY24, and as those products become available, we'll make sure that your committee receives those.
Please. Thank you. All right, let's move on to old business. There's none. New business. We have a Director of Community Development discussion, council feedback, led by Mr. Borg. I believe we have something in our packet on this one, Mike. Is that accurate?
You do? Just let me flip to my slides.
Was there a presentation?
There's both. I gave you a little paper and a...
Yeah. This is one of those nights where we have like so much
kinds of
stuff.
stuff, yeah.
Kind of struggling
Yes.
a little bit.
Okay, so you should have two items from me this evening. Thank you for putting up the slides, Karen. And really what this is about is Lyle's departure and retirement from the town as the Economic Development Coordinator presented an opportunity for us to take a look at what we might want to be able to do with the position that we had. We talked about an in-house attorney and looking at whether we could bring on and handle economic development in a different way with Lyle's departure and look at planning board, the town planner, and the folks that are upstairs on the second floor here. If an attorney would be inappropriate, could we save money? Could we answer questions quicker? And there's some arguments to both, but where we kind of settled, and what I'd like to share with you this evening is establishing a position called the Director of Community Development. And the basis of that position would be looking at economic growth, coordinating, collaborating with a number of different departments, primarily building, planning, zoning clerk and ZBA, Conservation Commission, and Planning Board, and working loosely with the Board of Assessors, because they all are tied into that. What we see is an opportunity, and we'd like to talk to you about that this evening. Next slide, please. So if you look at the context and the strategic alignment and how we did this, Lyle's departure, and he handled a lot, everything from grant writing for us, right, and dealing with representatives and developers who were interested in bringing new growth to North Attleboro, right? But we saw a gap in our current organization that did not address some of the feedback that we've gotten from residents, developers here in town, which is we have very stovepipe departments that don't communicate and collaborate well with each other and give us the ability to speed up and get processes done, right? Get behind something and get it done. So we saw an opportunity within the current landscape to provide centralized leadership through this director level position that would have responsibility for conservation, zoning, planning, and the building office. And taking all of those silos and bundling them together and ushering in and shepherding and moving projects and development through with a focus on economic development. There is a challenge. We do see leadership right now with, not that Lyle had this opportunity, but we're saying that's what we identified as one of the gaps that we saw. You could make an argument that I do all of those in my role, yes, but I do 100 other things as well on different levels. What we also saw was the creation of this position would align with the strategic priorities that you all established and put together earlier, and we've been working off those since 24 previously. We see the potential for improved coordination, but also enhancing customer service, right? Customer service has always been one of those very important topics that underpins everything that we do. And we're trying to find better ways, that we're looking at ourselves internally and assessing how we could do better. We see what this potentially could do. Next slide, please. What we see is this director could lead and integrate the efforts of all of those departments I just mentioned, right? And drive development, giving fresh new perspective on it. Enhance mission delivery. And what we're talking is that the town's mission statement that we have, right? And being centered on a thriving community, but bringing collaboration and responsible governments and enhancing the quality of life. That's where it ties back to our mission. We see that this is, if you would put it back into context, right, a focus on economic development, well beyond the role of the coordinator, but looking at all of those departments and how they impact economic growth here in town. We need to streamline processes. I need somebody to shepherd projects that go through Viewpoint, right? And Viewpoint is our permitting software, and it's a good piece of software, and it does a lot for the town. And what we would like it to do is have that person running and holding other departments accountable for their role in the process, right? And this drives communication between all of those departments. There's even a model where we could potentially take all the clerks that work in each of these departments and pool them, cross-train them in all the other aspects of it, and create an entire pool of, I just don't need one clerk, but I have a pool of clerks that can support zoning, that can support building, that can support conservation, right? And become experts in those areas and how to do that. But primarily become the point of contact for development here in North Attleboro, right? And work very close. Next slide, please. So what do the responsibilities look like for this position? Economic development at the very foundation of what it needs. The collaboration with all these other boards. The department heads, I have the ability to touch on a daily basis, right? And I use the department heads to liaise with these other boards. I would now add an additional person to be able to liaise and speak on behalf of community development. We see interdepartmental coordination as an immediate byproduct of bundling all of these departments under a director, right? We see daily operations enhanced, right? And the ability to monitor and have somebody in charge of tracking from birth to end of cycle on any development idea that we do that comes through. If you look at Emerald Square Mall, there's a number of different ideas. But now we add another person who's able to latch onto one with input from town council, from the administration, and move this forward, right? And at the bedrock of all of this has to be customer service. It has to be something that is prioritized in all of these departments, and somebody that's championing that effort. And it's so much, next slide, that I dedicated another slide to talk just how important customer service is, right? And it speaks to the core values that you all have adopted and pulled together in your strategic priorities, right? Most importantly, I think this helps build trust in the community, in the residents, and those that are in this development business. Next slide. We are not unique. Next slide, please. We are not unique in doing this. Cambridge, bigger town than us, for sure. But Franklin, right about the exact same population, size of government, budget. Attleboro has somebody designated for this. To add on, this was presented initially to you and the first town council in December of 2020. During my reorganization brief, I gave to you all how it, uncumbered by all the realities that we face, how would I do it? I recommended that all of these departments work for a director of community development. And there was probably a year after that, there was actually an op-ed in the Sun Chronicle asking us and saying that North Attleboro should do this as one of the recommendations. The writer had a couple other suggestions in there as well, so it is not a new idea. It's something that I think we now are at the crossroads and have an opportunity. Next slide, please. So, just kind of circling back and going to wrap this up here. Economic growth. It talks directly to housing strategies. There's a lot of development around 40B and 40R, but that's not the only housing strategies that we have, because if the IMROD passes as a bylaw, that is not affordable. That's not pegged as affordable, right? So, but you have a champion for that. It talks to the good governance that we all do, because I'm looking for additional process improvement and shepherding of developments and growth strategies through all of these different departments, and it also provides an outlet and a single point of contact for the community to engage with and engage through. Next slide, please. And should this go forward, I've kind of outlined what it would look like. I'm working with the HR department right now and drafting a job description. I'd be interested in feedback from the council on that. There would be a budget allocation. I do not think that Mr. Perney's previous salary would be sufficient to fund the entire, I think it would take probably a good portion of it, but I don't think it would meet all of the requirements. But it would end up being a net zero gain in the number of personnel, but it would increase potentially in the salary range. That's a very safe bet to say that it would. And where I'd be working with the town council to finance that position, we'd probably have to look at salary reserve or the reserve fund to potentially, if this was it, and then having that in place, go out and recruit the talent. No timeline specifically to that, but I would love your feedback and appreciate any input. I don't think this is something that we take lightly, but I think it's an important improvement that we see would benefit the town. I would gladly take any of your questions or welcome the discussion.
Thanks, Mr. Borg. I know I have a number. I'm going to open it up for the council first, Mr. Simmons.
So this is an example of the administration listening to things that we care about on council and things which we are told that our citizens need, and then coming to us with an idea so we can talk about it, we can weigh in, we can have input, and then we can work together to either craft something or not. But it's you being responsive to things that we've asked. You've heard me say many times, I want the town to get to yes on questions. I want them to help people to get to yes. I know numerous other councilors have said about the stovepipe departments make that difficult, where you have one department saying yes, you have another department saying no, you're not sure which one to go to. And we've also said that we don't like headcounts, adding headcounts when we have tight budgets. And this kind of, addresses each of those things. I will love anything which makes us more citizen-friendly and more customer service-based friendly. I think we have great staff here. I think we have great department heads here. I think if you had one person responsible for integrating those departments with individual projects and helping shepherd them through the system, I think that would be very helpful. I'd like to hear more about the idea. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts about the idea, but I like the no head count quite a bit. I think now's a risky time to add heads. We have a lot of big decisions coming up, and I want to see how those play out. But I don't ever want to miss a chance to improve on the service that we provide our citizens, especially where we want to control and guide development in town. I think this role helps people do that. Very, very excited about the idea, and I'd like to hear what everyone else thinks.
Where do I begin? I mean, I've been a fan of this since 2020. I think I told you loud and clear that I think that we were behind the eight ball. We should already had this in place. I came from a community, a city in Salem, where it was actually a hub, where everybody was actually in the same facility, not the same building, but actually in the same office, and it kind of streamlined services. They were able to integrate whatever, initiatives they're able to move forward. It's just a lot easier versus, okay, you're over here in this building, or you're over here in this area, like everybody's there together. They're able to, streamline services. But what I like the most about it is we're basically looking at a position we traditionally have had for quite some time. Yes, the person left, that's unfortunate, but it does create this new opportunity where our town is evolving and changing. So should the job that we typically have in town change and evolve as the people in this town change and evolve, right? So we don't necessarily need to just, okay, we'll find another economic development coordinator just to fill the position. No, that's not in the best need of the town and the residents right now. How can we better serve them? And I think it's phenomenal to look and say, all right, where are we lacking? What can we do better? Who could actually be the shepherd of that? I don't necessarily know if the title is sufficient for the requirements and what they'll be overseeing. You might really want to think about, chief or vice president or something that's around that. I don't know if pedigree is the right word, but something that's, because if the building commissioner, Conservation Commission, who else did you say that you said planning as well? So Gail, all these folks are answering to this one individual. I don't think a director's going to get it. So
I saw another town that called it the assistant town manager for community development.
Right, needs to be somewhere where this is like your right-hand man or woman that would be right there with you. So something to think about, but I'm 100% on board with that for sure.
Shannon and Mr. Gould.
To echo what they said, I think this is awesome. This has been one of my things that Darius and I, and we've all during our goal-setting sessions, I think this is a great development. I'm psyched that you're bringing this forward. I do think that the silos has been a major issue. I think you had talked about reporting structure in your slideshow. I'm hoping that you're leaning towards that these different silos, this is their direct report. Because I want them to have to report to this individual as opposed to take guidance from this individual. And then I think the other thing is we should really, hopefully we can focus on, unless we find some exemplary person from the public sphere, we should be focusing on someone from private industry, whether it's someone in the development background or like a land use attorney, some sort of legal mind that has done development in the past. Want to make sure that someone who understands the implications of each one of these departments and how it impacts development is in that position. And I echo Darius's thoughts as well on the title. And then my last piece would be on the salary, to make sure that it's competitive enough to bring in someone talented enough to do what we want to do. To John's point, right, we're going to be paying insurance, we're going to be paying this, the head count all stays the same, so all that static cost is there, and every additional dollar we pay on salary, assuming we're bringing in better candidates, will bring us back 10, 20, 100-fold in the tax revenue they can bring into this town by bringing in new development and encouraging an increase. We talked about new growth in I believe it was our last meeting, and why that number really wasn't going up. And it's because our tax base isn't growing. And if we get someone in here who's highly qualified, the difference between 20 to 30K in salary, whatever it is, we'll bring that back tenfold. Instead of just putting a warm body in this seat, someone who really understands development and how to work with towns from the private industry side. Again, if there's some public person who's got a ton of experience with demonstrating they've done this before, great, but I would love to see someone with expertise in development, or someone on the legal side, some land use attorney type person that has dealt with towns over and over again, understands the challenges and knows how to take out those roadblocks to make sure that we're one of the best towns around here to work with. As we all know, that hasn't been our reputation. So I think this is very exciting. I think it's great. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Mr. Gould.
So I like the initiative. I really like the way Mansfield does it. They have a one-stop shop there. If you go into Town Hall, they've got planning, conservation, building. They're all like in the same physical space. You can just get all your approvals with essentially stopping at one office. So I like the idea of being responsive to community development. I'm just wondering, and I would like to see more like job descriptions and reporting structure. I'm just wondering, we're going to be doing all these great things. What's going to fall off that Lyle was doing that we can't do anymore? And are his staff just going to transfer from economic development to community development?
I don't see any loss of what Lyle was doing. I think that becomes, like I said, at the heart of what this position would do. It would be a part of it. But now that individual, and going back, the reporting structure was always that the departments would be direct reports to this director level position. So they would all be vested, right? And that director could now harness each of them to their part and parcel of economic development and process in developing and make sure. I don't know that we have the space confined exactly, but Maybe we do at 451 Elm Street. Don't know. But we have other plans, but not that they can't be revisited. But we did say we were doing certain things with 451 Elm Street. But at the end, Kevin's all right. He's stepping out. He's okay.
Excited about the plan.
You must not like that idea.
He's going out, filling out his resume right now, getting ready to come back for it. No, I think those are all good questions and something we can look at. I'm trying to get to that one-stop shop, right, where it does it. And there is zero space in the reporting chain for this. The Director of Community Development worked for the town manager. All of those departments now report to the Director of Community Development, should this be adopted.
Dan?
I'm just going to echo what everyone else said. I think it's a great idea, great step forward. Definitely look forward to hearing more detail. I guess my one request would be that we look more towards, and this kind of ties in with what Andy said, but look for people who are experienced. If we're looking at people, for example, in the public sector, try and get somebody who's done this rather than getting somebody who wants to do it. I think you get what you pay for, and I understand that that's a dangerous thing to say for a lot of reasons, but I think that for this position to have the benefit that we want, we don't want a beginner in this job. We want somebody who knows what they're doing, has done this, has had these sorts of positions reporting to him or her, and knows what they're doing. So that would be my biggest concern there. And that person will cost. But I think, if we really want to see that kind of new growth in the tax revenue that you're talking about, I think we have to look at that as an investment rather than a cost.
So Councilor Donovan, absolutely agree. But I also would tell you that the town council is involved in that decision as well. I mean, this would be a position that requires confirmation.
Yep, for sure. The other thing I would suggest is another thing that it strikes me that kind of would fall into this would be the inspections that are done in town. And so maybe you look at an inspectional services component to this. So that, again, there's sort of a one-stop shopping, so that, people don't have to deal with all these different departments doing inspections.
It would include...
Thinking down the line.
It includes the building, it includes the entire responsibility.
The health department does some inspections.
The health department. All right.
That's all I'm saying, just, again, kind of looking at...
So the health department, normally the Title V inspections.
Yeah.
But I think there's an opportunity, like the Board of Assessors, I see there's a collaboration, not necessarily a direct report requirement.
Right, maybe a dotted line.
But there's definitely a coordination between them, and I think this is an individual, and we want to build this department around, or the director, the office around that. I just need 5-letter acronym like the Commonwealth has.
Yeah.
What's the timeline in your eyes for when best case scenario would be bringing this person on board?
Well, I'd like to finalize job description, right, and be able to get something back to you in December and go out in January to bring this person in, and hopefully sometime February, March, have them fully on board. But that's aggressive.
That's aggressive. Yeah, it is.
It's aggressive. But the need is there, and the opportunity's now.
And if we fail, then that's fine, but we're still June, July, right? I mean, I like the aggressive timeline.
Pat, did you have?
Yeah, I was just wondering, have you, since Franklin is the closest to our town, have you talked to them and see how this program is actually working for them and what shortfalls?
I have a call with the town manager, and he and I have met on different issues, but this is one of the topics, but we have not had this discussion yet. But they are another community, and I've looked through their web pages and what they've done and what they've advertised, as well as Cambridge, Somerville, New Bedford, a number of other communities that have a very similar office.
It would be good to hear if they're happy with the role, you know what I mean? Like,
or what challenges they're
expectations or,
meeting.
there's just be a good feedback. John, did you have something?
Just to echo on what others have said here, this is a great way to tackle the issues regarding communication and cohesion between town departments. I did just want to ask, did you have a ballpark, just out of the interest of transparency, did you have a ballpark salary range or delta from the current salary?
Just ballpark, and don't hold me to this today, but where the HR director and I have been looking at it, probably in the 120 to 150 range.
There you go.
Yeah, that's
Okay. I'm glad you said that. Okay.
A few things that, most of it's not repeat, but some of it kind of touches on what you guys said. Good conversation. Just economic growth has not been as good as we'd like it to be. That's historically speaking in town. This is before your time and before our time. It's been low historically. I've seen the charts. We had a blip for a couple of years. The last couple of years were better, but the trend has not been good. So something's not working like we'd like it to. From an economic growth perspective. Historically speaking, after the economic development coordinator role that Mr. Perney held was part of the override. So that was part of what the plan right there was to, really focus on economic growth, and that was a way in which we were going to do it. So his role and his salary was really defined in the old form of government. And I believe that just kind of carried over into the new form of government. So again, like Darius was saying, we have an opportunity here to kind of revisit that role and, modernize it, right, for what we're trying to do today. So I like that part of it. I agree this position is going to cost more money. That makes sense. It should be someone with an advanced degree or advanced experience, particularly industry experience, I think would be a good thing to look at. One thing that I think is kind of new to the conversation is I would like to see a measurable goal for this role. To me, like what would success look like? It would look like we've increased our economic growth percentage year over year. Define what this position's goal is going to be year one, year two. We should have higher economic growth, or there should be a way to measure customer satisfaction, CSAT scores, but just some measurable way for this person to be measured. Because, Dan, you were alluding to it, there's a lot of boards, there's a lot of committees, there's a lot of department heads, it's a tangled web with which this person would weave and be operating. So if we don't give them, if there isn't a number associated with that, again, I think it will be hard to kind of show that success, and could just get caught in the weeds of this system of government that's just pretty complex. So again, for me, first and foremost, I want to see more economic growth, and I want to have a target for that with this role. That would be ideal, in my opinion.
All right, Council President, on that, also read the few notes I put together in the paper, right? Because I cover this specific topic in there, and it's key performance indicators. Good. Right? And I talked about, number one, a reduction in permit processing times, right? That's something that's measurable, it's easy to identify, we can see an immediate effect on that one, right? I think really what the heart that you're talking about, Council President, increased business investment and retention, right? So not only new business, but our existing businesses as well, right? We want to be able to look at our existing business and retain them. I never want to be in another meeting where the local brewery says we're being attracted to another town because of there's something wrong. I see that this is a person that can help us weigh in on those arguments, right, and get on board with where the administration is on these positions and where the town council had already spoke through a bylaw on what to do. So we do that. And then one of the ones that we've all talked about, which is positive feedback from the stakeholders in this. I think that those are measurables. I'm sure there's more KPIs that we could take a look at, but right now, as I put this together, those are the three that jumped out at me that we could find. I don't know what those exact, I don't want to say, unless you fix them all, right? No. I don't think that's a realistic thing to say. But can we see? Do we see the seeds that are being planted and that are bearing fruit and now ready to be harvested, right? Can we see that being out there? Do we see the process on Viewpoint that a permit isn't sitting and lagging because nobody went and paid attention? We now have somebody said we've increased that timeline and we're getting those out the door. So I agree with you 100%, and I think what we have to do is, and we'll outline something.
I like the permit processing time one because it's measurable. To me, I would like to see measurable KPIs with this. Like I understand the more subjective ones, the positive stakeholder feedback. That's good, and that's ways that we'll know. But I think truly, after a couple of years, we should see a percentage increase in our incremental increase of economic growth in our town. That to me would be the ultimate indicator of success. That's what we're trying to do here. We're trying to expand our tax base, right? At the end of the day, that's how you measure all these things happening and performing well. So again, I know that's a hard stick to be measured by, but I think it's the most important one for an Office of Economic Growth, frankly. Annie?
So just from everything I'm hearing, and just this conversation right here, I think from the sounds of it is if the individual's in this role and takes care of clearly it's communication is one of the biggest things that we've been hearing for the last, at least as long as I've been on town council. And with the latest, example that you had with the brewery coming in, it's exactly those things. I think over time, if you start just, communicating with each other and cleaning up some of the ways that some of the lack of processes or outdated processes are and how better communication between the boards can be, I think the big one, the economic growth over a few years, I think that's almost going to be a given if you're putting things in place. I have, the ear that I've been hearing from residents, businesses, developers, contractors, is that, and I've said it before, North Attleboro is impossible to work with. I think this role is something that will help greatly with that.
Great.
And one of the biggest issues is communication, is the fact that a business puts something in and they have viewpoint and they're just watching that lag go on and no one's getting back to them, and they're going in, they're talking to people, and then they're sending them somewhere else. And if there's something that can stop that bottlenecking and help that, that's going to have, I'm literally hearing contractors say they won't work with North Attleboro. If this person can help change that, that's going to fill that gap and that hole that we have and grow that economic growth.
I agree. I think those are leading indicators of success, and if we can find ways to measure that, and then the lagging indicator would be ultimately the economic growth, right, after a couple of years. But again, without those things that are happening now, you're not going to get there. But if I'm looking back at this in a few years and I vote to support this thing and I see our economic growth is still $500,000 a year, I'm going to be pissed at myself for voting for it. Frankly, that's Mr. Gould, this is a council conversation, Sean, sorry.
Thank you for the second bite at the apple. Just a suggestion, I'm not sure if the office does this now, but a grants coordinator or having someone in that office that's actively applying for federal, state grants for, to continue funneling money into North Attleboro. And to Council President's point that the ultimate goal is to have businesses support a greater portion of the town. I believe right now, it's about 15% business, 85 resident.
It's lower than that now.
8713. 87 residential, 13
So what would,
CIP.
in your mind, an ideal breakdown be?
75-25.
That'd be a good way to measure it too.
Yep.
Yeah.
They're really good.
Progress towards that.
Thank you.
But I would want to prevent Cheryl from just splitting properties. More parcels.
She's not reporting to this person, right?
Yeah.
Do so.
Chinese firewall.
Is that feedback good for our first pass, Mr. Borg?
I appreciate it, and so I took a lot of good notes here, so just to kind of recap it. Looking at Mansfield and the office and how they set up, and talking with Franklin, which is something we're already scheduled to do, right? Understanding the reporting nature of this, that maybe it's not a director, but I would say director kind of follows what we've done here in town because you have the director of public works that holds a number of departments in it as well. But I have if it brings in the right talent, hey, if it's wordsmithing, absolutely.
Salary matters more than title.
Yeah.
Salary, we had a discussion. It's a ballpark coefficient, right? And I do have a basis number from where I had available from the current position, but I will tell you, we would have to add to that to bring this in, right? The inspections aspect of this and the experience, right? And then the coordination, that dotted line, if you will, to other departments that have inspections, like the health department and our through Anne Marie. Focusing on growth and looking at all the KPIs, I think this is really good feedback. What I'd like to do is put the job description together and then bring that back for the town council to consider, because I could hire somebody in for a year, and then if you vote it out of the budget, it's gone. So I'm looking to change, and through an action of the council, who that is, and I could get that back to you probably by the 9th of December with all the input that we have here and get the process rolling. And I think with your approval sometime in January, put this out into the market and see what we get, if it's supported.
Thanks, Mike.
You bet.
All right, let's move on to the next item of business. What are we doing with the time here? We're at 8:21. Webster Mill property update.
So the Webster,
Gould.
okay, I'm sorry, sir.
I was saying, Mr. Gould actually asked for this, so I put it on the agenda for this meeting. Mr. Borg.
He did. So Webster Mill is a continuing process. We're engaged with not only DEP, but the EPA, and I'd have Assistant Town Manager Morbido come up and kind of give you a brief where we're at and update. He is our point person for this action.
All right, Morbido, welcome.
So Tony Morbido, Assistant Town Manager. So the most concise update I can give you is that I'm working very closely with Mass DEP to find funds to complete what I'm considering the second phase of this project. Now, let me back up a little bit. Since the last time we spoke, I've learned a tremendous about this project. I've kind of ordered it in my head. If this were a project that we were authorized to do, it's really 4 phases. The first phase we completed last February, which was the demolition of the building for necessary reasons, for public safety reasons. I think we're in the second phase right now, and that would be debris removal. The third being decontamination, and the fourth being finally development. Okay, now the one thing I've kind of seen with these last 3 phases of this project, it's kind of like a game of 3D chess. So I'm looking for money to do the debris removal, but every single decision we make will affect the other, or the remaining 3 phases. So being the fact, for example, that we don't own the property, certain grants are available to us, certain ones are not. What the ultimate use of the property is going to be will open up certain grants and certain grants not. So I guess the good news that I would give you is no one said no yet. There's not a single conversation I've had with EPA or DEP where they've said no. Webster Mill is forefront in their minds. Everyone knows 262 Broadway. They understand the importance of it. They understand why we took the building down. And I think everyone's kind of excited to see it get to the next level, but I'm still looking for funding because my goal still is to do the debris removal with your permission, with other people's money. Sir?
Has there been any progress on, I think our last update, we were still looking to get confirmation from the state that if we took over the property, we wouldn't be liable for anything?
So that will, again, depending on the flavor of the money that you accept, will influence whether or not we still have liability or how we procure the property, if we were to do that with the council's approval. But also certain grants that if you accept them, you can never request EPA grants again. So that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and every single decision that we make will affect.
I can tell you, but without a doubt, the only decisions that I would ever bring forward to this council for consideration would be only decisions that would indemnify the town from any of the liability.
What's the rationale for removing the debris before the town theoretically takes ownership of said property?
We would have to remove the debris to do the phase 2 to determine how poisonous the property actually is. So the debris has to come off. When we first talked about, I guess it's 8 months ago now, 9 months, we were looking at what potential role the town would have to take in this because we were kind of the catalyst for bringing the building down. I guess I don't want to jinx myself here with, fake wood, but the DEP has, what's that?
That's real wood.
This is laminate.
Particle board's wood.
Like how this
gotcha.
Conversation.
Yeah, totally.
So the DEP has not come, normally you would have to clear the property within 6 months. The DEP has not come after us for that. Okay, what they have asked us to do though is make sure that the membrane that we put on top is intact, and that we've done. But we would have to do the debris removal before we could do the phase 2 to determine what level of contamination is in the property.
And the current estimated cost for the debris removal?
For debris removal is a little under $1 million.
Question. How do you get the debris off and not take any of the contamination?
So, I'm not an expert in this,
Okay.
but you can remove the debris and you can take the surface contamination off, but there's still subsurface contamination that was associated with the operations of the mill.
The debris from the current building will be contaminated and be treated as contaminated, and that's probably driving the majority of the cost for why we...
And once again, remember that the demolition, the first phase, it's really only 99% complete. If you go past, you'll see some concrete structures that still need to be taken down. Okay. I think this is actually good news. I can see all the glum faces. Like I said, nobody has said no yet, and everybody's very well aware how important it is to the town of North Attleboro to clean this area.
We don't want to rush to failure on this.
We're definitely not rushing to failure.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I have a glum face, well, maybe I do, but it's more just.
Looking in the mirror, right?
Realistically, yeah, exactly, you know. But it sounds like we're in sort of a vicious circle where, bear with me for a second. It's $1 million to remove the debris. The current owners do not have the $1 million. Somebody needs to put up the $1 million, but a developer won't do that until the debris is gone. So we're in a vicious, and until we can figure out, which is where you're saying nobody said no yet, until we can figure out how to break out of that vicious circle, the best we can do is just cover up the debris right now.
Which is what we're doing.
Right.
But again, I'm looking for potential ways of paying for the debris removal.
And it's not beyond the pale, and I think what breaks the potential cycle, we may have to come to you one day.
But I'm not there yet. Like I said, no one said no to everything I've asked for. Sir?
Are we looking at deciding on the type of development, residential or commercial? I know the setback it's only like 40 feet wide.
So again, the council's only authorized me to look into this problem. All I'm saying is that when I finally come to you and give you the options of how we could potentially get the funding, I'm going to tell you what the implications will be. If in fact we would have to declare a use for the property afterward, I'd tell you that beforehand.
Right, as a string to get whatever money we're getting.
Whether it be green spaces or affordable housing, sometimes the grants are associated with the ultimate use.
What if we cap it? Would that be cost effective?
It could be, but that will really depend on the phase 2 that we were just talking about. How septic really is the subsurface soil.
And we have to pay $1 million to find out.
No, we have to pay $1 million, well, someone has to pay $1 million to clear the debris. I think the debris needs to be cleared no matter what. We've got a pile of debris in the middle of town.
I mean, personally, if we can't find any other money, I'd support CIP money going towards this, but let's look under every rock like you're doing.
I'm not giving up hope yet, sir.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Any other questions? It's work in progress, but we can check back in a couple months, I presume.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
Excuse me. So next up, we have Measure 2025-23, the fiscal year 25 free cash strategy proposal. Mr. Borg has some slides prepared. You should have the deck in your packet. I don't know if you're going to share the slides on the screen.
Again?
So this is our annual, we've been doing this the last few years, I believe, where Mr. Borg is going to present this free cash strategy proposal to us. We're going to refer this topic to our Finance Committee. The Finance Committee is going to vet not only this proposal, but also, we hope and intend to have give and take with Mr. Borg on ultimately what we're going to do with this free cash for fiscal year 25. He'll come back with the recommendation, which we can vote on. Usually, and the way this usually works, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we're not actually going to vote on any specific spending measures coming out of this, but basically what comes out of this recommendation is what we're going to see, whether it be part of the budget process as far as CIP items and wherever else we might see specific measures that are the ways in which we're going to spend this money in the future would come out of this conversation. We'll see those throughout the course of the year. So that is, I encourage us all to listen and to provide our feedback tonight, and also knowing that the Finance Committee will be meeting with Mr. Borg probably fairly soon to have that conversation.
So
So
it'll be the 4th of December.
I'll pass the baton to you, Mike, for the.
All right, so you have the slide package, so she's bringing those up. This is a strategy proposal. We're asking for a referral to the Finance Committee, right?
I'll bring the cranberries in.
The picture here is very specific. What I'm proposing, that we use free cash and that you vote and support, is bridging our current requirements, our short-term requirements, to allow new growth to catch up. In that time, take over. I think there's a couple of different factors at play. You could see this as a potential preview of the FY26 budget, because we're going to talk about some of the things. But we're trying to also strategically position the town for the potential of a debt exclusion vote right, and achieving a superior credit rating that would end up saving tens of millions of dollars for our residents in the construction of a new high school. Next slide, please. First thing I start off with, what is free cash, right? The 3 bullets there at the bottom are really what you should take away, right? And this is straight from DOR: to meet unexpected financial challenges without destabilizing the operating budget. It's to fund capital projects to offset tax increases in a sustainable manner. And then you're using and paying cash for your capital projects, and then demonstrate financial management to improve the credit rating. So what this strategy proposal is, I want to hit on all 3 of those aspects. Next slide, please. If you're looking at in an executive summary of kind of what we're trying to do, I need to cover snow and ice. That's something I ask you for every year. I see the $2.2 million obligation for the Tri-County MSBA project that was voted for and approved by the voters, and we have not asked for a debt exclusion for to be able to do that. I'm also tracking and monitoring potential deficit in healthcare spending for the town side, and with that, we're looking to establish a stabilization fund to be able to address that. I see in the medium term a couple of items that we have an opportunity to address. One, I know that the retirement board met today and adopted Schedule 6 based on our previous discussion, which is roughly an 8% increase of our pension obligation for the next 9 years. So we have an opportunity to potentially buy down some of that with some free cash, right? We also have the opportunity to invest in our current CIP program, right? And then leverage, existing CIP stabilization funds if necessary and required. Right now, you're sitting on about almost 4.75. It says 3.75. It's 4.75 in there. I think it's different on a different slide for capital funds. At the same, I think we look long-term and look at contributing towards the pension obligation and the OPEB, right? So you got a couple of things, right? But what we want to do is and what my recommendation today is, take free cash, bridge some of these requirements that we see happening now, get us to the point where new growth takes that over. And I think that's probably about a 3-year process. And I make an assumption that free cash will probably be in the range of around $5 million each year. Let's go to the next slide, please, right? So snow and ice, the budget is 250. It will snow again one day. I'm confident. I'm here. I see it in the forecast even this week. But we would target 500,000, and that usually addresses the 40-inch snowfall that we have. This allows us to address Tri-County and set aside and put $2.2 million into the capital improvement stabilization. We treat the Tri-County building as a stabilization item, a capital improvement item. And then we need to address the cost of rising healthcare. Recent developments in healthcare is our current cost runs are at about 120% of premium. Very simply put, the town and the employees work together. We pay a 75% of a share, and they pay 25% of a share, and that creates, and we all pool our money together, and that's what we have. But we're running at about 120% on claims right now. So regardless of where we get our health insurance from, the claims are the claims, and they're going to be running high. We don't think this is permanent, but we see a deficit coming. We've burned through the reserves that we've had on hand from the previous thing. Now we're looking at it and how to recoup that, but I do forecast a rate increase for health insurance next year. And I've talked to a number of other communities, and they're all seeing the very similar picture when it comes to health insurance. I also see pension obligation, right? We did hear today that they've maintained a FY34 stance and targeted payoff with with Schedule 6. But we also think that new growth is out there. We see it coming. We see projects that are on the horizon, and we had a very low number of new growth this year because some projects were held up. we've debated here the cost of construction costs for roofs in this very chamber and the high cost that we're seeing there. Some permits didn't materialize as quickly as others, but we see probably an additional, over the next 2 to 3 years, 600,000 additional new growth dollars that we could bank on, right? We also have the potential, and not a guarantee, for rental income over that time period based on the 451 Elm and the current agreement that we have, around $200,000 as well. All right, so let's go to the next slide, and this is kind of the one that you're all used to seeing and how where it all lands and what we're doing. So I'll go starting left to right, going counterclockwise. Snow and ice, right, at 500,000. Capital improvements, I'm recommending 500,000, but that also be backed by the $4.75 million in the current capital improvement stabilization. I see 2.2 to Tri-County. And then creating, and I would say that 2.2 be put into the capital improved stabilization because that allows it to earn interest at a different rate than sitting in free cash. And that you pay it like a capital project and you would vote it out of there with the budget and into the budget when it's time. You would also then see, and I'd ask you to take a look at establishing a healthcare stabilization fund, and we put $1.3 million in it. That would cover our projected deficit for this year and the cost of the increase going into next year and stabilize cost of healthcare for our employees going forward. 300 in the stabilization fund, and then 200 into OPEB liability. You did adopt a policy, and that policy would ask you to adopt a much higher amount than what is currently proposed on this. So this would take a vote for you to adopt and vote to this amount. But it does put money towards it above the budget, which includes a $500,000 line item in the budget. So this would be a total of $700,000 for OPEB liability. And it helps us buy the opportunity for pension liability and paying that off and lessening the impact of that 8% increase that we see from the retirement board. Next slide. How does it all work together, right? We're always going to have to factor in snow and ice. That's not going to go away. I do think we're in a unique position to be able to put money into and leverage stabilization funds, gain higher interest on those returns, and apply them going forward, right? It allows us the ability to mitigate the cost of health care. That's probably the one unknown in there. I am not advocating that, employees should not go to the doctor. No. I am advocating that we take prudent financial means to address the issues that we see with healthcare, right? And then we have an opportunity with the pension and being able to buy down some of that and lessen the impact as we get closer to 84 and get to that time after where we can get to that phase 3 of that policy that you all have adopted. Next slide, please. So we have to be manage our risk appropriately. We can't overcommit on any one particular area. That would be the best advice I could give you on how to line up your free cash and where you would vote to support it. It's not guaranteed every year, but I can tell you the majority of the free cash that we have was not because of turnbacks from departments. It was in revenues from motor vehicle excise and the opportunity fund that we work very closely with NAED on. I think there's some timing that we have to be very specific. If you look at the potential of taking some funding and investing it today, and and putting it into key stabilizations, and it triggers the credit rating bureaus to look at us and give us that top rating, and let's say we end up with a 3% debt exclusion for a high school. Should it pass? Now that's a question solely for the residents to answer. Should this council push that to a ballot initiative? But 3 versus 3.25 over the term of 30 years, you could be returning thousands of dollars back to the residents. If we get the higher rate, it's going to be amortized over a 30-year mortgage. So creating the opportunity to put the town in the best position to get the best interest rate we possibly could, I think, is a smart. The one concern area I have going into next year's budget is healthcare volatility, right? It is something that we're trying to maintain. We have to have some serious discussions with our bargaining units on how this might unfold. but I think we have the opportunity to be proactive today because we're seeing deficits, potentially, right? Now, the rates and the claims ratio could change to 80% over the next 4 months, and it's a nothing burger. I don't think that's reality today. The October run rate was 120% of premium. So we had to dip into the next month's payment to pay off the current one. So we're forecasted to see a deficit materialize probably in the June timeframe with this. Having funds dedicated here gives us the ability to meet all those requirements. Next slide, please. Right. Again, bridging to new growth. We have some short-term issues that have got to be addressed. We're using free cash to do this. We see Kelly Boulevard, Draper Avenue, right? The hotel on 777 South Washington, the storage unit on Elm Street, right? That will bring in probably around $600,000 in tax revenue, right? We'll see that materialize over the next 24 to 36 months. There's other areas of new growth. Remember, not all the levy grows primarily from new growth, but if you were to add an addition to your home and you had a new assessment that rises the value of that assessment, doesn't necessarily mean we're not benefiting, but it makes the levy grow at a smaller amount. It's not considered new growth. We have been doing fairly well with lodging and excise tax, right? So we see that projection of about $65,000 over the next 2 to 3 years. And then the rental income from 451 over the next. We don't have a basis to add that into the budget yet because we don't have a year's worth of experience and we don't add that as a budget line. And we don't have a contract with the potential tenant at that building. So we're working through that. Next slide, please. So you'll see here the long-term, how we look at where we're at today, right? How we should allocate, bridge between 26 and 28 with free cash, let new growth catch up, and then take over those two areas. I think the results are still the same, which is we're not asking for a debt exclusion at this time for Tri-County. I think that we have the ability to cover that. I think where we're doing it with little to no impact on the current budget by using that free cash. The debt exclusion for the North Attleboro High School does not impact this strategy one bit. It exists at the discretion of the voters. Should they pass and approve it, it would be added to the budget, but the levy would not be factored as a part of that. So I'd ask for a referral to the Finance Committee. We'll go into depth, talk about more of these and how we see this and are able to bridge this. And again, there are no binding edges. It's just a strategy that you would adopt, and it would come back in individual measures throughout the year based on these outcomes.
Could you go back to this slide, please?
Which one?
The spiderweb.
The spiderweb one, that one, yes, thank you.
Thank you. So you're proposing a new health insurance stabilization fund be created? Is that accurate?
That is correct.
I don't believe that exists right now.
It does not.
Would that just be a vote of the council to create that?
That would be a majority vote and a majority vote to take the money out and a majority vote to take it out and repurpose it for something else if you so desire. So if the claims became manageable and realistic over the next couple of months and we didn't need it, you could always vote it back out into some other fund
we
or
only use it
purpose.
for health insurance?
Not if you vote it out and change it into something else. You can always take the money out and vote it to someplace else.
Okay. I'm glad I asked that. CIP stabilization, so you're also talking about this, putting money into our CIP stabilization fund to help, I just want to make sure I get this straight, to help kind of bridge the gap of the Tri-County Vocational High School $2.2 million annual payment over the next couple of years. Is that what you're thinking there, or or is it to cover it in the first year? What's the thought process?
Okay, so this is the first year. In year 2, it goes to $2.7 million. So what I'm saying is, I would take this and consider it a capital project, much like the building that it is, right? And put that into that 2.2 into capital improvement stabilization. And when the time for the budget would be built, we would transfer away from the capital improvement stabilization fund through a vote of the council to put that as a line item receipt into the town's budget.
For your finance committee consideration, I don't think you're proposing this, but I don't like that as a long-term strategy, certainly. I know that's not what you're proposing. Ideally, we'd have to find the way to pay for this out of our operating budget. Would have to.
And that goes back to what I'm saying.
If it's a 1 or a 2 year thing where we're leveraging free cash to help bridge that gap, to build up towards having that be sustainable, fine, I think. But again, that would be my concern around that, and let's make sure that this strategy kind of goes away in a couple of years. That would have to be like that.
That's the case. So I'm looking for 2 to 3 years, right? And so if you go back to that director of community development, you can kind of see the relationship and the tie into it and how we could potentially move this and build new growth to relieve free cash from this requirement obligation and build it into the budget.
And I'll just say one more thing before I'll open it up. Sorry, I usually don't go first, but in regards to the capital improvements bucket, the 500K, or just in general, maybe not even that bucket, just in general, I always like to focus on other opportunities to leverage free cash to accelerate projects that we've already started, maybe that have slowed down, or maybe could be accelerated, and or other opportunities to leverage free cash to fund one-off things that could potentially, streamline processes, to deliver economic growth, kind of arm us with information that, as a town, right, that we could use. So just ways to sort of accelerate, the processes of government or economic growth or whatever it might be. Are there ways to leverage free cash, like to bring in outside consultants or such, right, to, focus on a particular issue that are certain departments, maybe the building department doesn't have the bandwidth to just cover a certain project, but those sorts of things I think are very good uses of free cash. And I don't know what your plan is for the High Street fields being completed, right? But that's one that we started that personally, I know it came up during our goal setting session. A number of councilors talked about that. Like, would love to see whether it's free cash or maybe there's another plan for it that you already have in mind. How we cover that. And one last thing, also, I think an area that I'm just throwing right out there is if there's anything with 451L and kind of that project that, because we know that might go over. But those are just areas that I would be interested in having be a part of the finance committee's conversation.
So for clarification, I'm recommending 500,000 come from the current allocation of free cash to be designated for capital improvement projects. The capital improvement program will have more than 500,000 because I'm saying we're backing that with the $4.75 million in the capital improvement stabilization. So there will be other projects. But out of the pie that's free cash that was certified, I'm saying 500,000 I would push to that and say, all right, 500,000, what other projects need to come up? All right, we'll choose the capital improvement stabilization fund as our recommended source for the council to consider to fund it, right? We created the capital improvement stabilization fund to have an opportunity to fund projects in the future when we had a need or requirement to.
Makes sense.
It was just to build more.
Just around that High Street field thing.
I can hear Mr. Cameron saying, why are we just putting money into a bucket and not using it?
Is there an opportunity to leverage free cash to accelerate that project if it's indeed stuck? That would be one of the things that I would like to have.
Or from the capital improvement stabilization fund.
Or any fund,
Yes.
yeah. Exactly. It may not be the appropriate place. You could just say that during the meeting. The appropriate place to have that conversation is going to be during the CIP time. We'll cover it, but just kind of check that box would be. Any other comments or feedback? John?
I just, when I look at this, I see paying bills. I see saving for known future bills, and then I see general saving. All three things I like. The OPEB, the pension, stabilization funds, these are known expenses that we've that we have incurred, we are on the hook, we have to pay. Whatever little bit we put in saves us money in the long run, saves us time in the long run, frees up budgets in the long run, without hurting all of the forward growth we've had on projects, which I still think that we fund through the CIP stabilization. That's why we set that up when we had the money. So when we don't have enough free cash to finish projects, we have that stabilization fund. Anything you put in these funds can be invested, they can grow. It isn't just sitting there. And, you know, again, this year, I think, is a good year to sit back and save and see what happens. We have a lot of unknowns moving forward, so I think this is a good fiscally conservative, sound plan. I would like to hear more, obviously, at Finance Committee, but I think this is a good start. Mark?
Thank you. So I like about half of this, I'll piggyback after what Councilor Simmons was saying. I like pension, OPEB, snow and ice, capital savings, stabilization. I do have a couple concerns. Number one, we're violating the OPEB policy. What did we put in place 2 weeks ago?
No, sir. It included provisions that you could vote to change it.
So we're complying with step one, 500,000?
Yes. That will be the line item in the budget.
And then tier two was 20% over and everything over 1.5 million?
Correct, subject to a council vote to change that to any amount that they deemed necessary.
I don't know that I would have voted for that policy had I known we weren't going to fund. I recall discussion at Finance Committee saying if we follow this policy, it'll be $1 million into OPEB.
That if you follow the policy, and the council decided it didn't need to, but there was a distinct discussion around giving and empowering the council to take tier two and establish where it would, to increase it or decrease it.
So usually council can just decrease. You're saying we could increase?
Because it's your rule and your policy. It's not a budget item. It's how much you want to take out of free cash. Because remember, tier one is the budget. So based on the policy you have, you'll see me submit 500,000 in the budget. Tier two is what you're going to use from free cash. The town council controls free cash. They vote ultimately where it gets spent. This is just my recommendation for what I see as some of the challenges and the opportunities ahead of us. And I'm recommending that you vote 200,000 into OPEB, which is different from the policy, but allowable should you vote to establish it at that level. You don't have to. You could say we want to vote, $1 million into it, and that's what'll happen.
Yeah, okay, that would be my suggestion. But the other concern is, I'll echo Council President's concern that we need to pay operating expenses out of the budget and not rely on free cash. I understand it's a 2 to 3 year plan, but the Department of Revenue, the credit rating agencies look to this. One-time money, one-time expense. And they're going to look at this negatively.
I would disagree, and here's why. The Tri-County MSBA construction project is not an operating expense. Should North Attleboro get and be approved for a building, they're not going to pay for it out of operating budget items. It'll be through a debt exclusion. What I'm saying is I would tee this up to create it as a capital project and support it in that way, putting these funds, allowing us to leverage the interest rate that we could gain from that investment at that amount until we get to that bridge in new growth. That's the other. You could take it straight from the operating budget, but then we would have to create a potential meeting the scenario you just described using free cash to pay for operating budget. I'm saying it's now capital, and we are paying our tuition and obligation operating the O&M for Tri-County through the budget. We're treating the construction portion of it as a capital project.
I'm not sure so the rate will go up 2 to 3 years just for the construction part of it? I'm a little confused. We're going to transition this into operating?
I do see that new
2 or
growth
3
would be
years?
able to transition it to operating it with, should new growth materialize over the next 2 to 3 years, that you would be able to transition.
If it doesn't, we're screwed. Forgive the...
But you then would still have the opportunity on an annual basis to look at new growth and what it materializes, and the $5 million that we're forecasting in free cash each year, which is in alignment with the DOR's recommendation for between 3 to 5% of your budget. And going back to slide number 2, meet the unexpected financial challenges without destabilizing the operating budget. Fund capital projects to offset tax increases. Those are exactly the requirements that free cash was designed to do. The proposal I have, and is subject to the vote of the town council, is exactly what I'm describing.
And then my final point is, or more of a question. So the plan, to clarify, you said earlier Martin Playground would be included in the CIP for next year's budget, so the grant from the state, the earmark wouldn't expire if we reserve money by June of next year?
The grant is due to, the earmark is due to expire in June. So that project would come out and be a separate part of the CIP and go forward. And if there are funds required outside the additional grant, we would look and find potential ways to make up that funds, either with free cash as a part of the $500,000 in the capital, or the capital improvement stabilization, or the great work that the town accountant does at finding additional project funds that have closed out and bringing forth that our couch cushion discussion. But I see that we're in a very good position. You have a good, and the council has the ultimate vote on where free cash goes. This is my recommendation on how you could apply it.
Understood. Thank you for your time and your efforts into this.
You're welcome.
Andy?
Yeah, I hate to just echo what other people have said, but that's what I'm going to do. It's like, unfortunately, like where we are with all of these responsibilities is that we have in front of us. This is not a sexy free cash plan, right? It's a pragmatic one. And so I think, no offense, Mike. But I think, to Councilor Simmons's thing, we have saved for capital improvements, saved for a rainy day, so we are ready for these obligations because you've known and been planning for these for a while. I think the one thing I would request finance look at is just how do we shuffle, right? We know we have to put money into all of these buckets, right? Does it make sense to put 100% of the 2.2 we're going to owe? Or do we ask for the operating budget to cover some of it so we can put more into OPEB, right? Like, what is our return on investment from the interest rate in the CIP stabilization fund versus the savings on the OPEB liability by putting money in early, right? So like that type of give and take, I think would be valuable to understand. I think I think all of this makes sense. Health insurance is just an unfortunate, we have to pay it, right? But like, as we have a certain amount of money and we're looking at these 7 buckets as where it needs to go, especially when we're projecting for the future with interest rates being somewhere and interest rates being somewhere, what makes the most sense to put the money in? And how do we maximize our return?
And Councilor Shannon, that's a great point. And what I would tell you is you have the ability, if it stays inside of free cash.
Vote it out and vote it back in.
Right. But to let the budget process play out as well, so we can see where that's, so if you want to maneuver it, you can. If you think you're settled on 2.2 to go into CIP stabilization, because that's where it's going to end up potentially, you can start earning the interest now. But if you want to have the flexibility to address future parts of, because when we build the budget and we say, hey, maybe we found X amount of dollars, inside the budget, it might, so you have that flexibility, and it can come to you at any time in that process.
Yeah, so I guess part of my question, right, is if we say yes to 200K on the OPEB, is that money lost to us, or are we waiting 6 months down the road till after our budget is set before we actually pay it? And does the CIP stabilization fund give us flexibility that if we decide we don't need that 2.2, we can then move it to OPEB?
So the actual policy that you all passed for the OPEB payment allows that payment to be made, and I actually wrote it into in June of the year. So you have that time up until then to figure out what you're going to pay or not pay into OPEB. So you're holding that in reserve. So because if snow costs $2.6 million, and I'm not saying it will, then all that's off the table.
Yeah.
The whole argument and, it changes. The argument's different because Snow voted, and it's saying we're taking 250,000 and 2.6.
And I suppose by June, we'd have some idea of
You're
what
gonna,
next year's
and so
budget
that's
would
why
look
in
like.
that policy, you built it in to say we would do it in June and then in July for the budget. So you would see two payments for OPEB, right? One in June with free cash and then one in with July 1 with budget number.
I like what you're saying, though. You're echoing what Mark and I were saying, too, around that $2.2 million number for Tri-County. If that number was 1.5 after we go through the budget process, right, that we're actually leveraging, which is a third of that number, and that's implying a 3-year bridge leveraging, free cash in that fund, I would feel a lot more comfortable about this. So I would envision it being leveraging 1.5 this year, leveraging, 750 the year after, leveraging 0 out of this fund and going exclusively to the operating budget. If we had that path to operating budget, that would be much better than if we end up having to spend $2.2 million on that Tri-County project out of this fund in next year. I would be concerned by that, because then we haven't really made any progress towards making that sustainable. So again, I just have my eye on this one. This one seems like it's critical, and I understand the rationale for the strategy, and I think I agree with it as well. But it's a very much a concerning one.
And I do take your point that it's not really an operating expense, but the goal would be to get it within our operating budget, right? So those are same term, but two technically different items.
That's correct. And again, I just want to bridge to that new growth, right, that we do see coming.
Got it.
Pat, did you have a question?
Just if we do it that way, what's the potential for the interest? For the amount of time it sits in there?
It depends on I would defer to Mr. Sweet, the treasurer, and he has that. But the opportunity fund that we have been leveraging, and I'll give you an example. It's a $14 million investment instrument that NAD gave to us. It earns around $750,000 a year. So if you were to put this into CIP stabilization along with the $500,000 and then you vote it out for CIP projects, your balance would be 6.7, about 6.7 almost. You would earn some interest. I can't say you're going to earn 5%.
Smaller amount though, right?
Very smaller.
It's very low risk.
You probably earn
sort of investments.
And that was $750,000 for a year, right? So that sat in that fund for a year.
All right, this has been a good conversation, and I'm not trying to, we can still have it if you guys want to. I would recommend we make a motion to send it to Finance Committee, but if anybody has anything that's really new, feel free to please say it after we have the motion, right? We can still discuss, but it's a good time probably to refer.
I make a motion to refer the free cash discussion for FY25 to the Finance Committee.
Second.
I have a motion from Mr. Simmons, a second from Mr. Costello. Is there any additional discussion on this topic?
Quick question.
Yes.
Tenant at 451, are they paying and just tenant at wills, or what's the situation? You said they're not under contract, so what's the
They are
status?
paying.
Okay.
And at an previously agreed upon rate, and we're in negotiations on the contract.
Long-term solution. All right, thank you.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the referral to Finance Committee. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? That motion passes 9-0. It is referred. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody. Next up on the agenda, we have a conversation around participatory budgeting. I imagine the intention would be to seek a referral to Finance Committee of the topic, but if you have, Mr. Gould had brought this to my attention, so open it for you.
If the councils would prefer to have this discussion in Finance Committee, I'd be amenable to that. Otherwise, I could give a brief talk.
I think it would probably be a good idea to give a brief overview of what you're looking to have referred and why. And
Sure. Thank you. So I'll try to keep this short given the hour. I appreciate getting this on the agenda. This is a fun item. Everything, it seems, has been gloomy thus far in the agenda. So basically, this would allow the public with guardrails, with limits, to have input on town spending within, limits. I passed out a handout. This was Lexington's program. I wouldn't suggest something that's 500,000 that they've done, but it's trending in various towns in Massachusetts. This is something that engages the people and it would be an exciting thing to do. So essentially, I mean, this might, a couple of examples that I thought could, based on community feedback to me, are park benches. I've had people ask, can I get a bench at the park? It's like $5,000. Something I'd be interested in would be a vending machine at Town Hall. Maybe veterans banners for $5,000 or a $5,000 stage to put up at the block party. We could have a boxing match and crown, Mr. or Mrs. North Attleboro, give them a key to the town. Just small expenses. Another town took $10,000, built a shed on the town hall property and has a lottery where small businesses can use it for a week or two. So it'd go to 26 small businesses per year. They'd have a week or two to pitch their merchandise. It's a fairly new concept. Briefly going over Lexington's guardrails, they said it had to be a one-time expenditure. We're not adding any positions. There cannot be any operating cost. The town cannot hire additional staff. They said suggestions had been water fountains in a park, electric vehicle charging stations, bicycle repair station, I'm not really sure what that is. Accessibility improvements like a handicap ramp, like crosswalks, just little things to get people involved. We have 5% voter turnout on our elections. This would stimulate community involvement, interest. Wouldn't be a huge expense. It would be 2% of our free cash, maybe even 1% if we did a pilot program for 50,000. It's worth considering. Other towns are doing it. That's my pitch.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or thoughts or concerns, or John?
Just thoughts. This kind of piggybacks on something that I had said at Charter Review Committee that picked up a little bit. The goal we have about increasing voter turnout. And how do we increase voter turnout? We need more voter turnout. My viewpoint is I would love more voter turnout, but I'm far more concerned with intelligent voter turnout. When you come to budgeting, getting people involved, I'm not sure how much more we can do in terms of public hearings, in terms of one of our subcommittees being focused on getting information out to people, in terms of us leveraging North TV to try to get information out to people, holding public hearings, having public communication, having people show up at meetings to speak. I don't know where that disconnect is between everything that we're trying to do to get people involved and who ends up being involved. But I will say that those who end up being involved go to the polls educated with an understanding of everything. I've had two budgets where I've been the chair of the Finance Committee, and we've had public hearings on the budget, and they lasted 5 minutes because nobody showed up. So using this to increase public participation, well, yeah, when they're allowed to spend money on things they want, they might. But how does that affect the rest of the budget, the rest of everything we're doing? I'd much rather focus on quality of what we're doing budget-wise than simply trying to get more people involved. I would love them to be involved. We want them to come to our meetings. Please, all of you out there, come to our meetings. Tell us we're doing it wrong, tell us we're doing it right, but show up and tell us. I don't think the overriding goal can be just increasing public involvement. I think it has to be educating the public and having increased intelligent public involvement I'm not sure I'm ready to go this route. And I don't know necessarily that this would be a finance committee measure.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
There's no funds attached to this. It's more of how you would create your budget. Would you leave a piece out and have the voters vote on something that they want? So I don't know that it's a finance committee issue, where there's no money attached to it. There's no projects attached to it. It is kind of like the free cash proposal. It would be discussing a financial proposal, but this at least has money attached to it.
Right, it would need a recommendation and then a council approval.
Yeah, so I would be opposed to sending this to Finance Committee, and at this time, opposed to the overall idea. You can lead a horse to water sometimes, but you just can't make him drink. And I don't know where that disconnect is between what we're trying to do to reach the public and having them show up, or having them reach out. I have people reach out, but it's never about the budget. It's always about specific items in town that we can help them with. So I don't know how we go about that, and I understand your overriding goal is to get people involved, and I think that's a healthy, laudable goal. I don't know that this is the way to do it.
Dan?
Similar to what John is saying, but I think a little different. I don't really see where this is all that different than what we do now. I mean, people come to us with proposals for crosswalks or playgrounds at schools or any number of things. They come and visit Mike, or they come to they can contact any of us. There's 9 of us. They can contact us. I guess I don't really see the difference. Even, for example, this Lexington plan, they took $500,000 of ARPA rescue plan money. We did that with the small business, forget the term.
Yeah, good term.
But that's what we did. So I guess I guess what I'm missing here is what's different. If it's getting residents involved in the budgeting process, they had that up until 2019. It was called town meeting. Residents were directly involved in the budget process. And in 2019, when they adopted the charter, they said, "Wow, we don't want it. We're going to elect you 9 to do that." And judging by the fact that, like, MBTA hearing, nobody shows up. Tonight, setting the tax rate, nobody shows up. I don't know. It's not an awful idea, but I just don't see where it's all that different than what we're already doing. I don't know. I guess I'm missing something, but I don't.
Can I just add a clarification? So what this would do is it would give people an opportunity to actually vote. And before 2019, it was also a representative town meeting. It wasn't a free-for-all town meeting like some towns do. So they were elected representatives. Here, it would actually be people from the community to vote. I think Lexington got 1,500 votes or something. So whoever's interested in a project, I mean, a good example would be like, well, never mind, that's not a good example. But I was going to say the dog park, but that worked through, the process that, another process. I'm sure Kevin knows more than I do about that. But allow people to actually vote. I like this project. I like this project. It's not a lot of money. It'd be a fun thing that we could do.
All right, thank you. Do we have a motion in some way to refer it or to continue the conversation? Do you want? What's your goal with this?
I mean, given that it was said it wasn't appropriate for Finance Committee, I tended to agree. If anyone wants me to spend more time and come back with a more tightly crafted proposal, I guess I was just trying to get a feel for it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if anybody.
I don't have anything.
Okay.
All right, thank you. I mean, we discussed it. It's an idea. It's maybe something to consider for the future. I don't know. I agree with what John said.
Yeah. Thank you.
Around this time. All right. So the next item again was from Mr. Gould. It was the concept or the idea of leveraging free cash to pay down the levy for this coming year. I would imagine this would be in seeking a finance committee referral. But again, I'll give you the floor.
Sure. I will just say, if we were, I don't want to belabor it, if we were going to do this, it would have made sense to do it before we set the tax rate. But I'll just, does that not make sense? or-
No, I think you have the opportunity in the recap for next year, for '26, to do it. You could set aside funds out of with free cash to pay down the levy. So you could start that process now, but I don't think it would impact until FY '26.
So it is possible. So just very briefly, this is not something that a town manager, to my knowledge, has ever supported, using free cash to reduce the tax rate. I'm not sure it's anything this town manager or any town manager
That's a fair assumption, so yes.
will ever support. That said, 20 to 30 communities in Massachusetts have done this in the past few years. It's initiated by council because council realizes times are tough. Not everyone can afford to take an evening and go to a multi-hour meeting. Some people have to work second jobs to put groceries on the table. And I mean, there's people that write letters in the Sun Chronicle, there's people that come to our meetings, and they speak for a lot of people who could use a little break. And I would support giving them, not all of our free cash, but a portion, 20% of it, $1 million. And I think it's a reasonable ask. I'd ask for a referral to Finance Committee so we could discuss it there.
Do you have any estimates on what that would be for the average tax bill? To talk to the Board of Assessors or anything on that one?
Right, so I had estimated $1 million would be $100 per family, and my understanding is the treasurer estimated that would be $97 per family.
How does a cash get distributed to families? I don't understand.
So it reduced the overall tax rate, and then the average residential.
Isn't it properties? It's based on property.
Average house.
The average house, some higher, some lower. It's based on your assessment.
It'd be based on assessment, but you would also, it would have to be applied to all the categories: residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property. So if you had like the mall would get a break,
Yeah.
they would
and
get a
that's-
benefit from this as well.
That's the problem with this type of concept.
But
right?
and
You
also,
can't target
and just
the
to be
poor
fair,
or the
How big is our levy?
older.
the levy is right around $73 million.
73 million? So $1 million on top of 73 million.
And
What would that be
what you're doing with free cash is you're paying the first part of the tax
For
bill
1%
with the free.
reduction?
with-
1.3% reduction on your overall levy, and that would
$8 a
be
month.
distributed amongst.
$8 a month for the average homeowner.
It seems rather small. John?
Laudable goal, lessening the burden on taxpayers. The problem is that if we don't do it every year, they get a slingshot back the next year.
Yep.
And they get the regular increase plus this increase here. And I can't tie the hands of future councils to keep doing this. I think the way that we have been doing it, by trying to expand, maximize all of our tax exemptions, where we have tried to spend fiscally conservative, we have tried to save, we have tried to have budget policies, we've tried to improve the credit rating, we've tried to save our debt levy. At the end of the day, we have the lowest tax rates in the area across the board, and that's not going to change.
It might in June.
It may, except that's up to the people. And if they vote for that, then they have voted for that. And it's specific to that project. It's not the overall operating budget. And if that's what the people vote for, of course we're going to do it. But I think that this, it sounds good, it feels good, but at the end of the day, it's not worth what it would take away from the rest of the budget. I could take that $1 million and put it in stabilization, pay pension, pay OPEB, pay Tri-County, health insurance, all the things that we're using free cash for, we would have to increase those free cash expenditures by that $1 million. Laudable goal, and one that you've brought up a couple times, and it's something that you obviously care deeply about. You should. You're trying to find a way to help our taxpaying residents. Nothing wrong with that. I just don't know that this is the way to do it. I think prudent fiscal management of our budget is the way to try to lessen the burden and look at every single tax exemption we can. We'll have that chance again this year to look at our tax exemptions. We have the new HEROES Act that we're going to have to look at. There's some interplay between the HEROES Act and other exemptions as to would you have to pick one over the other? Or there's other budgetary items we can look at to try to reduce the burden. But at the end of the day, if the citizens vote for the high school, then that's what they voted for. I think looking at the shift after that happens, I think that's the way to go to try to lessen the burden without punishing the businesses. I don't want the businesses to get too nervous about next year's shift. But there are other ways that I think we can accomplish lessening that burden. I would not be for using free cash to pay down the levy.
I won't be so long-winded. I'm just a hard no on it 100% all the way around. Not wavering on it.
To make a motion, or Dan?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to say, again, echoing John, I think it's a great idea. I mean, it's great to want to give people a break. If there were a way to target this somehow, we have a lot of exemptions for seniors and veterans. If there were a way to target this to lower income people or people who don't qualify for other exemptions, something like that, we can't. We don't have that ability. The amount of money that would be going back to the residents is small. Unfortunately, nowadays, it's not even a trip to the grocery store.
It's insulting.
So it just, I like Darius, I guess I'd have to be a hard no on this one. The juice isn't worth the squeeze, to borrow from I forget whose favorite expression that is, but that's what it really comes down to, I guess.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about the shift in the future, and I'd also like to talk about potentially what percentage of the levy do you tax to? I think that's an area we could actually have an impact on people's tax bill. But I agree. I don't think the free cash is the way would make a big enough impact versus the costs the opportunity costs of where this money could be spent. But I will give you or anyone else the opportunity to make a motion if you care to, of course.
I mean, given that no one supports it, I don't think I'll make the motion.
No worries. All right, so that concludes that conversation. At this point, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
I got a motion and a second from Simmons and St. Pierre. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are adjourned, 9:23 p.m. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.